Class 9th, tissues. In the previous session, we learnt about the tissues, plant tissues, mainly meristematic tissue, and permanent tissues. In the permanent tissue, we learnt parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, that is simple permanent tissue, and complex permanent tissue we learnt about xylem and phloem. In the simple permanent tissue, we learnt parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. We will go now short repetition glance of the simple permanent tissue. Parenchyma tissue cells are loosely packed. They have more intercellular space between them. They are living content of the cell. They are living cells. Mainly they store the food, and they lost the ability to divide. In case of the parenchyma, we can divide the parenchyma in two, where in the parenchyma cells, if they contain the chloroplast in the cell, that type of parenchyma is known as chlorenchyma. Very well. In the parenchyma cells where contains the chloroplast or the chlorophyll, that type of parenchyma is said to be as the chlorenchyma. The function of the chlorenchyma is to prepare the food as the process of photosynthesis. And in case of the parenchyma itself, if the intercellular space is more, and in the intercellular space, if it is filled with air, that type of parenchyma is said to be as the aerenchymatous or aerenchyma tissue. In the parenchyma only, if the intercellular space is filled with the air, and that type of parenchyma is said to be as the aerenchymatous tissue. Both chlorenchyma and aerenchyma are the types of the parenchyma tissue itself. Next comes to the collenchyma tissue. Collenchyma, where the plant is having the ability to bend. There we can see the collenchymatous cells. Collenchyma, they are also living content of the cells, but the cell wall is thickened into the corner where compared to the parenchyma. In the parenchyma, cell wall is very thin, but in collenchyma, in the corner edges we can see the thickened cell wall. But in the other side we can see the thin cell wall. When compared to the parenchyma, collenchyma cells are placed little bit near to each other. Means we can see the very less space between the cells compared to the parenchyma. Means the main function of the collenchyma is to mainly help to retain the flexibility or bending of the plant parts. Next comes to the sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma, compared to parenchyma and collenchyma, cell wall is very thickened, and there is no intercellular space between the cells. In the parenchyma, much intercellular space. In collenchyma, little bit intercellular space we can see, but in the sclerenchyma we can't see any intercellular space. Cells are very closely attached to each other, and the cell wall is very thick. The cell wall is made up of a special type of cellulose known as lignin. This makes the cell wall much thickened. Parenchyma, collenchyma are living content of a cell, but the sclerenchyma is dead content of the cell. Where we can see the sclerenchymatous tissue, where the plant parts are very hard, tough. In the case of leaves, veins have the sclerenchymatous tissue, and in the husk of the coconut and the hard covering of the fruits, almond covering, there we can see the sclerenchymatous tissue. Next, simple permanent tissue, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Complex permanent tissue, in the previous class we learned about the xylem and phloem. Xylem and phloem both together known as vascular tissues. What? Xylem and phloem, they are known as vascular tissues or vascular bundle. Both xylem and phloem are complex permanent tissue. Xylem and phloem, where we can see the functions, xylem mainly transfers the food and water. Phloem transfers food and water. Xylem transfers the water and minerals. Next here, xylem is made up of 4 types of cells: tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma and xylem fiber. Here in the xylem cells are mainly dead cells except xylem parenchyma. Xylem is having 4 type of cells: tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma and xylem fiber. Tracheids and vessels helps in conduction of the water upside and side of the plant. Xylem parenchyma is a living content, mainly it stores the food, and xylem fiber, it gives the strength to the plant. In case of phloem is having 4 types of tissues: sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem parenchyma and phloem fiber. Sieve tubes and companion cells help to transfer the food upward and downward or both the direction of the plant, where phloem parenchyma stores the food as well as helps in the sideway direction of the transfer of the food, and phloem fiber helps in protection. The main difference in transportation of the materials in xylem and phloem, where we can see in the xylem only one-way direction of the materials from roots to the tip of the plant, but in case of phloem it shows both the direction of the transfer of the food that is prepared by the leaves, upward as well as downward direction of the food. So they are said to be as the vascular tissues or vascular bundle. Another type of plant tissue, very important, epidermal tissue. Another type of plant tissue is epidermal tissue. This epidermal tissue, you see, the epi means outer, dermal covering. Epi means outer covering of the tissue. In the plants, most of the cells are dead cells. they act as the protective or strength giving or supportive cells. In the epidermal tissues, these epidermal tissues, they are covered to whole plant body. According to their location, they perform different functions in the plant. I am repeating once again, epidermal tissue are the outermost covering of the plant. It is covered the whole part of the plant. Epidermal tissues, they are rectangular, having no intercellular space. These epidermal tissue cells, the outer covering is very thick and the side wall and the inner covering is thin. There is no intercellular space. It covers the whole plant part of the plant. Mainly their function is to protect the inner part of the plant. Now we will see where in the aerial plants, in the case of aerial plants, this epidermal tissue that acts as a protective tissue. How? It protects the plant by the loss of water or the fungal infection, or also it protects the plant to hold the water in the aerial plants. In the desert plants, the epidermal covering is also having one more outer covering known as cutin or cuticle. In the desert plants, it is having one more outer covering known as the cutin or cuticle. This cutin is mainly of waxy coating and it not allows the plant to lose the water in the form of a transpiration. It helps the plant to retain the moisture content in case of the desert plants. Next, in the roots, in case of roots, the epidermal tissue, it's having root hair. Mainly these root hair helps in the absorption of water and minerals from the surrounding environment, that is from the soil. In case of roots, the outer covering of the epidermal is having the root hair. These root hairs help in the absorption of water and minerals from the environment, from the surrounding or from the soil. Next, in case of the leaves, upper epidermis, palisade, xylem, surrounded by phloem, and spongy cells. Totally it is known as the mesophyll. Palisade and spongy together known as a mesophyll. This is the upper epidermis. Next comes to lower epidermis. In case of leaves, the upper epidermis is having the continuous sheet. There is no intercellular space between them. But in case of lower epidermis, there is some regions we can see the gap between the epidermal cells. This gap, we can see the gap. This gap is nothing but a stomata. that is covered with the guard cells, that is the stomatal epidermis, where we can see the presence of stomata. Guard cells, this is stomatal pore, and this is epidermal cells. The function of the stomata, mainly it helps in the exchange of gases, as well as it helps in the function of the transpiration, that is the water loss. You know, when the epidermal cell grows, matures, that is replaced by the cork, where the plant grows and becomes older, there a secondary meristem replaced by the formation of the cambium. That is due to the secretion of the chemical known as severin. This chemical mainly present between the cork and the epidermal tissue. When the plant grows and becomes the older, the chemical secretion of the severin makes the formation of the cork. This cork is also the supportive tissue. This helps in the imperviation of the gases, means impermeable. They not permits to the movement of the materials or the loss of the water in the epidermal tissue. We will repeat once again. Epidermis mainly acts as the protective tissue, and depending upon the location, it performs the different functions. In the areolar tissue, in the aerial plants, mainly it helps in the protection, as in the case of the acts as the fungal infections, or it helps in the loss of the to prevent the water loss, and in case of roots it help in the absorption of the water and minerals from the soil, and in case of leaves it helps in the transfer of the gases, or it helps in the exchange of the gases. That is, severin is a chemical that is secreted by the plant. It helps in the formation of the cork. Cork acts as the protective tissue, as it is a dead cell.